Welcome to part 2 of the K2 and MS-20 variants tutorial. In this part I'm going to be going over the modulation section. In the first part I went over the oscillators and the frequency, which is the signal section. So the modulation section is everything below this line, this thick wavy line right here, and then everything above it and to the left here on this side is your oscillators, filters, and your signal. Alright, so the one thing I forgot to bring up in the last section, real briefly I'm going to touch on, is the high pass filter. What's interesting about the MS-20 and K2 is if you bring up the resonance, you can increase bass, which is great for bass sounds and so forth. Now let's go back to the modulation. All right. The way this worked is that there's a modulation generator and envelope generator 1, envelope generator 2. Modulation generator is just an LFO. You have here waveform. It's got like sawtooth ramp down going to ramp up, and then in the middle is a triangle wave and a frequency. Then you have envelope generator 1. You also have square waves, but you can get the square waves by going through here, but you can see the shapes right there. Welcome to my channel. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you are interested in this content, I encourage you to please check out my individually crafted 75 techno, house, and electronica patches for the K2 and MS-20 variants. All links are down below this video. It's great if you would like immediate high quality sounds for your own songs, and also as learning material to see how each of the patches was made and use the principles for your own sound design. Thanks again and enjoy the video. So here, envelope generator 1, you get a delay time, which is just a delay before it actually comes in, and you get attack and release. This is more of actually a modulation envelope, and it's not your primary envelope that controls the sound and filter. The main envelope is right here, generator 2. It's got a hold time, which is like a full amount at the beginning, and attack time, which is like the increase, decay time, sustain, and release. I'll explain these all in just a second. Alright, so like let's bring in oscillator 1, and we can go through the envelope generator 2 briefly and how it affects the volume. So you know attack time, you bring it up, you get that slow attack. So the whole time you have to play around with it. It's a little bit interesting how it works, but mainly it actually comes before a decay, like on a percussive sound. It's the initial like full sustain time basically before your decay actually hits. So it goes straight and then it goes down. And one thing you might notice here too is like if I just have the decay and I don't have a sustain, it's all in legato mode. And the MS-20 and K2 is always in legato mode, so it doesn't re-trigger. You have to make the notes separate, otherwise if they're tied together you get legato. Okay, there's your sustain level, acts like normal, and then release as you would expect. And it's also got this analog style envelope where like the release starts coming down and then it catches itself with the next note on the attack, so it doesn't actually come down all the way. Like it doesn't reset automatically. It takes time to come down, and as it comes down, if you catch the next note halfway, it's going to start at halfway. Alright, so that's your envelope generator 2, and we went through that. Now let's talk about how to make that affect the filter. and so forth. Okay, so basically we're gonna go, I'm gonna jump into here, and then I'm gonna go back and cover envelope 1 and the LFO. All right, so like you see how here there's 3 modulation sections: frequency modulation, cutoff frequency modulation for the high pass, and cutoff frequency modulation for the low pass. All right, right here you're gonna see it says, if you read the very first letters, that's the default routing, and the second letters are related to the patch bay. So here the first letters is MG, which is LFO, okay, and then it says EG1, which is envelope generator 1. So that's for the VCO, for the oscillators. Then cutoff, it's MG, which is again LFO, and EG2. So in this case, this bottom one is for controlling envelope 2 to the high pass, and same here, MG LFO, EG2, that's envelope 2 to the high low pass. Now, one thing that's interesting, it's a little bit odd, and I'm not really even the biggest fan of it, in the MS-20 and its clones and variants, is the way that the sustain level and this envelope actually works together with the, because it controls the volume and the cutoff at the same time by default. Okay, and the sustain is like, it works backwards. So let me try to explain this. We'll bring in, oh here, why is this happening? We don't have any sustain, any decay. Okay, let's bring this in a little bit. Now put this down. There we go, there's our low pass. So if we bring in EG2, see, it acts as you would expect. It brings in some decay time, so I can make this shorter. I can bring in some attack, or I can put some hold time. You see how that sounds? Now here's the tricky part. When this sustain level goes down here, when you bring the sustain level down, it brings the sustain level down for the amplitude, but when you bring it down, it brings the frequency up. So like the sustain level down brings the cutoff up and brings the volume down, and the sustain level up brings the cutoff down and the volume up. So you'll see what I'm saying now. Okay, so let's bring back the oscillator volume. You'll see if I bring up the sustain volume for the volume, it lowers the cutoff. So if you want the same cutoff as you had before, you actually have to bring it up. And as you bring this down to lower the sustain on the volume, it brings the cutoff up. So you have to bring it down. And I guess they just designed it that way, you know, to give like different ways that you can work with the synth, and it's one of the unique features of the synth. So you see here how it says EG2. So by turning this up, I bring in EG2, right? What I'm doing here, just bringing the oscillator in and out with the pattern so you can hear it. Now let's go back here. MG is our modulation generator LFO. Let's put a medium frequency. You can see the light pretty fast. Okay. You see, you bring in the MG, you're bringing in that LFO. Okay. Let's bring in some sustain. You see? You bring in a little or a lot. Now the frequency, it doesn't go quite into audio rate, but it does make a nice rumble. And you can get a downward sawtooth or an upward sawtooth by changing the shape. There's that downward sawtooth. Right? So that's the cutoff modulation. MG is the LFO. EG2 brings in the variations of the envelope, and then same goes with the high pass. It's easier to hear it maybe with a little bit of resonance. See how you can start getting these interesting sounds? Because it has a high pass on the synthesizer. So that's like bringing in the EG2, and then same here, MG, you could bring in an LFO. And you can really hear it because I got that resonance going. Alright. And then here, this is, so that's, we covered 1, 2, 1, 2. Now on the frequency, it just says EG1, I'll get to that right now. MG, so that's MG, LFO on the frequency. Or a little bit of vibrato. Or a slower vibrato. Or very fast. Alright. So that's that. Now, so we covered actually the LFO. We covered envelope generator 2. The last thing really to cover in the main modulation section is envelope generator 1. The only default place you can bring in envelope generator 1 is actually right here on the oscillator. So let's do that real quick. And then you can bring in envelope generator 1 on the other places as well. But that has to use the patch points. So we'll go on. So the delay time, okay, is like how long it takes before it actually comes in. Then you have, all you get is an attack and release. You can't hear the release unless you have some release on your volume. So it's kind of a weird envelope in some ways, but if you work with it creatively, you can find ways to work with it. So let's bring that in. What's interesting about it is that it actually, on the MS-20 and the K2, is like the attack brings the pitch into your main pitch rather than like piling on top of it. Like you would normally expect the pitch to go up, but it doesn't. See, so like the release is actually bringing it down. So the more that you bring it in, the lower the initial pitch actually is, and it goes up to your main pitch. Which is actually great because it means it's much easier. Like you just have to tune your synth and you can use this as an effect. You don't have to worry about retuning it when you bring it in because it automatically makes its maximum section the default tuning. Alright, and then let's bring in some delay time. This delays. So because you see, you brought in the delay time all the way. This is its bottom frequency. So like the delay is keeping it at its most bottom frequency. So that's where it's starting. That's why it's like clicking, because it's super low. So it starts there. You can hear where it's starting. And then the more I bring this down, you see it actually is lowering, it's raising its bottom frequency back up. So the way this is brought in, this actually lowers the initial pitch, and the sustain is at your set pitch. So if you have a longer melody, this is where you can have something like, where it's like, dun, dun, like something like that, where you have that delay, dun. Okay, and you can also use that to modulate an LFO, as I'll show you later. Like if you're bringing, you want to get that effect where you bring in your LFO like this. like where it's like for example, like you want to get that, or like a vibrato or something later, you can modulate the LFO to come in by this delay time and the attack time to hit your pitch later. So that's great for like funk sounds, or it's like damn, you know, stuff like that. And that's all right here in the patch bay, which is my next video.